Take a nice deep breath in, bring the palms together at the chest, thumbs touching your sternum. We'll Om shortly 3 times and then start. Om. Om. Flex your feet. Bury yourself fully into the pose. Om. Bow your head for a moment. Salute the essence of yoga inside yourself. Bring your hands into your lap. Let your head rise. And your eyes open. All right. So nice to see everybody. I'm glad some of you stuck around through that whole thing. Awesome. And then some more of you even snuck in. Great. I've always said that no matter what time you get into the yoga class, that's good time. I've had students show for the last 10 minutes of restorative. Happy you're all here. Whether from the very beginning, 5 minutes, 10 minutes earlier, those that might come later. All right, so tonight we're going to continue kind of the seated work we've been doing quite a bit this last month, looking at some interesting forms of twisting, how to adjust the hips, height, differential, and pelvis work, and we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and stretch both legs straight out in front of you in Dandasana, please. And I would like for, if you can, sit on something to give your hips a little extra height. I know you might be practiced in such a degree that sitting on the floor offers you no difficulty. But just because something's not difficult doesn't mean we still don't modify it to keep going back to it and learning. So sitting on a bolster, pillows, blankets, whatever can, a block will be fine. Whatever can offer you some support. Stretch both legs straight out, Dandasana. Take your fingertips and just your fingertips. Try not to push the knuckles or the palm into the floor, but take your fingertips onto the floor and lift your chest up. Point the fingers the same directions as your toes and your legs. Sorry, Gorgie adjustment. So point your fingers the same direction as your toes, your legs, and lift up in the back, and then engage the legs. Take a moment when you're pushing down through the fingers to notice where on the front body and on the back body this activates. And there is an activation to this, that when we work in Dandasana for a moment, it kind of preps the extension and back muscles to flex forward or backward or laterally or even rotate in any pose we go forward in from this. So already just press through the fingers and see what activates to help you create the lift. If you're someone like me that has a tight lower back, you're probably tending to push the mid back forward so like your bottom ribs are coming out. Tight upper back, your shoulders might tend to kind of want to push up and forward like this, like a football player. So when you push down, try to draw these bottom floating ribs above the navel, not up here in the mid chest or anything. Draw them back and lift right up here from the shoulder, right between the shoulder blades. Move that upper thoracic up and forward. So there's a broadness to the sternum and the collarbones. You might actually feel the flesh stretch a little bit. And then the humerus bone, the bone between the elbow and the shoulder, push down, but move the humerus bone back, like your elbows are trying to stretch back to the world behind you a little bit. This might make you feel like you're leaning back, and Tristan probably feels like that, but her shoulder and hip are directly stacked on each other. And so that's kind of what you're trying to look for, is not can you use your lower back to push you up, but can you use your upper back to help you lift? Because the interesting thing is in our seated postures, if we lock into our mid or low back, kind of pushing one way or the other, it really restricts our ability to move in later variations of seated work. And it actually restricts our legs' ability to move. Because if our legs are extended like this and our low back is tight, if we pull them in for, say, Janyu or pigeon pose or whatever, it's going to restrict because of how the low back connects to the inner thigh. So as you're working here, flex your quads, push through the fingertips, and go right between that shoulder blades. Again, try to draw the broadness across the collarbones, the sternum, that same lift. not pushing the bottom ribs out or shrugging those front shoulders forward, excuse me, but pull the shoulder back towards the elbow, find that lift, and work through the legs. Because the more you work the upper back like this, over time, your legs will get very fatigued, because what happens is when we're not locking the low to mid back in this, the thighs can work harder. And when your thighs can engage better, it creates a much more balanced point of the pelvis to create some lift. Now, why are we doing seated poses when for most of us, we're seated a lot right now? We're in computers, you may be, stuck at home. Many of us are. We could get up, we could do a bunch of standing poses, but learning how to work with our bodies where we have to be, I think, is one of the most important things out of the yoga practice. So just keep working on this for a moment. Challenge your quads to stay flexed. Challenge your toes to stay pulled back. Can you start to train your body and feel where the habits of your body want to go, and then start to use your intelligence and go against those habits? Because after this hour, you go back to your days. So you might go back to seating, but now you'll have a little bit more awareness of what you're going through, so you can make those adjustments. No matter the circumstances of how big the troubles of our life are, we still need to be aware of ourselves in each moment so we can create what we want to. That's our power. And that's what yoga offers in a big way, is that maybe not to, wave your hand and genie the world fix, but at least make your back feel better when you're seated. Or at least, notice how weird your hair gets on. So take a moment. When you flex the thighs, notice which one wants to quit first. For me, my right leg does not want to engage as much as my left leg.
Dustin, are you squeezing our shoulder blades in the back?
No, I did not. Do not squeeze your shoulder blades together. You want to, if you squeeze your shoulder blades together, that's just pushing your rib cage out again. That's just pushing the whole thing forward. You want to push down through the fingers and use the chest muscle and tricep deltoid to pull those elbows back, and then think about right up here between the shoulder blades. It's not squeezing the shoulder blades together, but that upper thoracic muscle has to press forward, like you're trying to push the bone of the spine forward towards the sternum a little bit. This is often over-exaggerated by this, where you pinch the blades in and over sway. And all that does is make the mid to upper back lift, but locks your lower back in place. Over time, this, while it looks good, will lock your lower back up and actually cause a compression to the lower back. It's not really. This is about making your legs work in the lift. So let's stretch the legs and the hips just a little bit. So you're gonna, with both legs straight, take your right foot, your right heel, up on top of your left foot, and try to get your Achilles tendon between your left big toe and its second toe. So they wrap around the side of the heel, basically. This will spread the toes out. Don't worry, it's hard and it may make your foot ache. It's good for you. So now one leg is higher slightly. Push down through those fingertips. Flex your thighs. It's not pushing the knee joints down, but push the thighs towards the hamstring, so the top muscle to the bone. Then notice when you press down through the fingers, which leg wants to unflex, keep it. Move the shoulders back, not by squeezing the blades in, but just stretch the shoulders back away from the chest. And then right between the shoulder blades, move that forward. There's a flexion of muscle that creates that pectoral lift and broadness. And don't try to pinch in from the blades. If you only want to work from your shoulder, that shows a lot of manipulation of the shoulder joint that will over time create a lot of headaches, things like that. Good. Tristan's doing good. Pull both sets of toes back, flexing the feet as much as you can. Now, the right leg on top is extended and it's stacked on the left like this, so it's really going to elevate that femur bone. So when you flex your right thigh, think about trying to pull your right hip back. Like you're trying to pull that whole right thigh back towards the hip as best you can while still keeping your chest and body lifted in that way. So what you're trying to learn to do is to manipulate the hip and pelvis a little bit without having to always twist your back and spine to make it happen. Deeper extremes of this would be like, grabbing your foot, taking your leg up into the air, right? So this is just that small adjustment where you start to work leg muscles. You may not be able to see, but Tristan's already shaking. She suffers so you can learn. How lovely. All right, switch legs. Put your left heel right up on top of your right foot. So this isn't about going through like 10 or 20 really hard poses and you're practicing. Make your practice about learning what you're going through. So then as you go on to your own practice, which I hope you're all doing some level, even if it's, a little bit of time every day, you have this deeper awareness of what you're doing with and to yourself, so you can make sure it's exactly what you need and want. If you don't know what you need and want, you still do it anyway, and you'll figure it out. Push down through just the tips of the fingers. That's really important because if you push down through the palms, it encourages over engagement one way or the other. Just the fingertips. My teachers were really adamant about this, and I didn't understand for a long time until I just did what they said. I would sneak my palms down and push. So now, as you lift, work that upper back forward. Draw your bottom floating ribs back slightly. Push the thighs down towards the hamstring. Don't even try to press the thighs down to the floor. The floor is just there. But think about, can you move the bone of your leg into the muscle of the backside of your leg? And then pull that left femur bone back towards the hip on its own muscle. Okay. So it has to do some level of work like that. And this is just prep. What this is doing is working those inner hip muscles. It may not feel like a deep stretch, but remember, a lot of the deeper muscle tissue doesn't have the same nerve feeling that, say, skin does, or the hamstring, or some of the stuff that we often can easily feel is tight. You're working a lot of different stuff. Bring the left foot down. Okay. Take your right ankle up onto your left thigh into Janu Sirsasana. Good. Pull that right ankle up the thigh as close as you can to the hip. Now, we did this last week, but we'll do it again this week. If you are tight enough that you cannot, either and both, you have to have both parts true. A, pull your heel all the way up to your hip and point the foot. Do not flex the toes back to the knee right now. Point your foot. So if you can't do that, grab a strap. Then, if this is true, then you check, can you stretch your right arm behind you and touch your big toe? If you can't do that, grab a strap. Anything else works in place of a strap. A belt, scarf, blanket. Tristan can actually touch her big toe. Good for her. So even when we did this last time, it's not about how hard we twist, right? It's about how hard we engage the body to lift and still expand while we put this manipulation on this joint, the shoulder joint and the hip joint at the same time. And I've come to realize some of the interesting, important pieces about this pose because of it. So let's everyone get to it. Left leg nice and straight in front of you. Right ankle up on left thigh as close as you can to the hip. If your knee hurts, elevate it with something. Books, bricks. They're called bricks because, you'll hear them called bricks or blocks in a yoga studio. Once we get in the pose, I'll tell you the story of how that one got coined, at least in the Iyengar's school of it. So once you get that up there, you're going to stretch your right arm straight out to your right side. Turn your palm to face back behind you. This engagement, this extension of the arm, stretch the arm away from your neck and then stretch the arm back as high as you can with your hand up in the air. Really challenge the arm to stay up high as you move it behind you, like Tristan is. And then when it's gone as far back as it can, then you stretch the arm down and bend the elbow to reach across. Do not get into the habit of leaning, twisting your shoulder, and then jerking yourself around because that's just spinal manipulation. One of the things that's very interesting, now grab your toe, grab the strap, walk your hand down the strap farther, whatever you can do. It's all right. Fun thing about being in a yoga class with a teacher where you can ask questions and they're guiding you is that you get to experiment with something different or weird, you know. We're all here because we're looking for something different, right? So now's the time to explore and do so. So when you get a hold of your big toe or your foot or the strap, notice how much your body wants to twist to the right. The thing that I would like you to do is you can use your left hand on the floor next to your hip, fingertips only, is press down through the fingertips and lift your spine up again. Be aware of, do you want to just push the bottom ribs out? Pull those bottom ribs back. Lift that upper thoracic so the muscle between the shoulder blade presses towards the lung, so the lung and rib have to expand wide. Mr. Angar was really clear when you're starting a lot of these poses or you're starting a lot of the sequence stuff, anytime you really begin, before you start manipulating, reset and stretch the ribs wide again. He often would say the ribs must stretch and widen like a tiger's claws. You ever see a cat or a tiger's claws come out? So you gotta look at that. Once you press those left fingers down, you've opened those 2 points. Notice how much your right ribs turn back. Draw your right ribs towards center. They may not come perfectly center, but even though your body wants to go to the twist from the joint manipulation, you draw your ribs back centered in front of you. So you encourage that shoulder to have to move, the chest to have to open, and the muscle under the shoulder blade to have to change. Flex your left thigh, all that same good stuff we've been doing. Add to what you've already been practicing for the last while. Because here's how the pose actually starts to adjust the 2 joints, the hip and the shoulder. To rotate your right ribs to face your left toes again, your right hip and knee will start to move towards the left toes themselves. Your knee doesn't stay stuck off way to the side like this. When you rotate your rib in place, it pulls forward. If you flex your left thigh and draw your right ribs forward, your right thigh comes across a little bit. This is natural. This is a widening of the hip muscle on the back side of the body. It's not very complex, but it's important to note that if you press your bottom ribs forward when you do this, you actually keep your sacral plate and pelvis muscles from getting the full movement and rotation. We often sit twisted in chairs because we have a dominant versus non-dominant side. And that missets the joints and the muscle inside the joints over time, you know, harden that way. And where the idea of yin yoga, I believe they call it, you know, where you sit in a pose for like 5 minutes and you're super joint, that came out of the school of work. It's out of the Hatha school of work, where you can get into these poses and start to not feel necessarily, because it's not about sensation, but it's about intellectual alignment of your body so you can see and experiment with what's going on. All right. Right ribs roll forward, bottom left ribs pull back slightly, because it's easy to want to take the twist and make it a bend. It's just a rotation. Take a nice deep breath, stretch out with your left hand and reach for your left foot. You may not get a hold of your left foot. Your hip's going to be tight, your knees could be tight, your hamstring could be tight. But grab a hold of, even if you only touch the left shin with the left fingers or the thigh or the calf, create some extension that way, and then become aware of how your right side of your body stayed back behind you. It's not about forcing it down. Go to your left ribs first, lift them up, move your left front ribs back slightly. So there's a lift and a widening of the shoulder blade. When you collapse on the left side, that shoulder blade and all the muscle under it constricts down. This causes tightness in the neck. Go to your bottom left ribs, lift them up slightly, pull the bottommost front ones to the back ones a little bit, and then move your right ribs towards the foot a little more. Try to take the twist out of your body, not by pulling yourself down harder, but by pulling up against that forward fold and using that tension to start experimenting with the rib rotation, hip rotation that takes place. This is what ultimately frees the knees and hips up for poses like Padmasana, full lotus, and all those others, horse face, cow face pose, all that good stuff. You would do this a lot, this and a lot of straddles to get towards full Padmasana, which is actually kind of what we're working towards. Not today, it'll be a course. We're playing the long game with this kind of work. Rotate those right ribs, lift those left ribs up so it almost feels like you're trying to pull your left side of your body away from the leg. And you are a little bit, you got to hold tight. Flex the left thigh. Take a deep breath. Move your head back slightly. So when you move your head back, make a note. It's not about shortening the neck, where you shorten the back side of your neck. Pick the head up away from the shoulders like you're having to lift over something behind your shoulder blades. It'll feel weird, but you get used to this action a lot because it makes your upper back flex in a way it doesn't normally. It'll teach you how to feel those upper back muscles in time. All right, you've suffered enough. Switch sides. Both legs straight. Take a Dandasana for a moment. Fingertips, feel it. Okay. Feels different now. What's different for you? Tristan's got a lot of achy hips, so that's her feedback. Left ankle goes up on right thigh. Pull it as close as you can, safely without any torque or tension to the knee joint. Point the foot. Use your strap around your foot if you know you're going to need it. And if you used it on one side, use it on another. Only work as deep as your tightest side can go. Stretch your left arm straight out to your side when you're ready. Take a breath. Turn your palm down. And with your palm down like this, now's the time when you turn the palm down to really stretch the arm away from you. There's a certain muscle engagement that happens in the back side of the arm and this happens. Stretch it away, back. Stretch it down, back. And then bend the elbow and swing it across. You want a lot of relief to the shoulders, the tight upper back, you got to start doing behind the back manipulations like this. A lot of the beginning standing poses, right? The Gomukhasana with the arms, interlace the fingers, arms up, arms reach behind us and lift up, right? We do a lot of that. Our Namaskar behind us, all that stuff behind us. Because this action, moving that arm back, really challenges the 99.9% of our days were like this, or maybe not as slouch, but you know, mouse, drive, boxing. Well, I know my yoga jokes aren't very on point. I don't know what's on. When you get a hold of whatever you're going to get a hold of with your left hand, flex your right thigh, check in with it, check in with your rib cage, pull your front right ribs back. Move your left ribs forward so you're trying to bring yourself back to that symmetry so that whatever's going on in the shoulder and down in the shoulder blade upper back has to become something that is moved. This is the joint manipulation. Redrawing the body to center while these parts have moved into that manipulation. So whatever's going on in the small tissue or the stuff that gets manipulated when, that big movements don't do, right? Throwing your shoulders back. You have to kind of sit in it. So I did say the brick thing. So in the Iyengars like to claim, and I don't know if this is true, that Mr. Iyengar set up use of all these props, and in the Iyengar studios, the blocks are called bricks, because when Mr. Iyengar first started teaching, his first class was like a walk, like a 30-minute walk away from his home in another town, another village. He would walk past a brick factory. And as he started teaching, people couldn't touch the ground, they were hurting, stuff like that. So he would stop at this brick factory and buy clay bricks for pennies, couple 2 or 3 at a time, carry them to the next town, and then give them to people to put their hands on. It's a fun little story. Use your right hand, create the lift, move those right ribs into it, pull the left ribs back. Remember that when you draw your rib cage into the pose, your left hip might roll, your left knee might roll forward towards that right foot. It's never going to perfectly get in line with it. That would be Gomukhasana of the legs, and we're not doing that right now. But this is a prep to adjust all that spinal upper back thigh stuff. Take a breath, exhale, stretch forward, grab your big toes or calf or what you need. You all right, Katie?
My left foot is asleep.
I know. I'm sitting in line with you. So if your left foot fell asleep, you might want to be careful when you lay your left foot on. If you lay the spot just below the ankle on the foot, the space between the ankle bone and the side of the foot right there, if you lay that on the foot, that's right on the circulatory line of the foot. You will start to go numb. You have to get the joint on it in the beginning until your foot rotates enough to face up. That's why I always say put the ankle bone on your thigh first. Even though it makes your thigh ache, it protects your foot circulation. All right, so from the forward fold, remember, draw the left ribs forward, pull your bottom right ribs back, lift them up like you're trying to pull up and out of the stretch. You're trying to pull away from the forward fold. Let your left thigh come into the pose. Just as your left ribs come forward, your left thigh is in it. Hold for a few more seconds, pull the head up and back. Take a few deep breaths. And if all this is easy, remember the practice can always be, can you shorten the time between your inhale and exhale? And specifically the part where you've completely exhaled before you start to inhale again. Is there any time in between that? Up you go. Start with both legs straight, Dandasana, lift. Remember, elbows stretch back, so it pulls the shoulder towards the elbow. Don't squeeze the blades in. Move the upper back forward, pull the bottom ribs back, press the thighs, get the lift. Go ahead, bend your right knee, keep the lift. Try to keep the lift and then bend the knee on its own strength. Pull the knee up, let the knee fall to the side, and then slide the right foot slightly under your left thigh. Point your right foot. When I say point, this does not mean this, it means this. You point the right foot because you want to try and press your right shin bone down into the floor as hard as you can over time. If your knee does not lay on the floor, that's okay. Push your right foot into the floor. Whatever part of your right leg is touching the floor, foot, shin, knee. That's correct. That's right there. The foot is not right up to your left hip. It's just under the left, about mid left thigh for right now. So if you can only get your right foot to the floor, your knees tight, your hips tight, push the right foot harder into the floor, not the side of the foot, but try to push the top of the foot down. Activate the right thigh and don't push to the outer knee, push to the foot. One of the things that teachers will say in a lot of classes, and I've said for years, is don't keep your chest lifted. Don't push down on the joint, but you can push down on the part that's already connected to the ground. Take an experiment. For a moment, with your left leg straight, your left knee is not touching the floor. Push your left knee down to the floor and feel the knee flex. Feel the breast of the thigh. It's probably not great. Okay. So now, instead of let your left knee go soft, flex your left thigh and push your left heel down into the floor. Your left Achilles tendon down into the floor hard. There's a different muscle flex that happens in your thigh. I almost sit upright way more comfortably doing that. Work into the ground the parts that are already touching, and that will make space for new stuff. All right. Keep your chest lifted, bend your left knee, slide your left knee up to your chest, reach your right hand down and grab your left foot, and just try to pick the leg up. You can use your left hand on your left knee and just draw the shin up a little bit towards your chest. If you're someone that has the flexibility where you can pull the whole leg across to this degree, great, go for it. If you're someone like, me on my really tight days where I'm down here, that's okay. Just use the arm to pull the body up and then feel how your back and chest, again, want to manipulate to make that happen. It's the same thing we've already been talking about. Check in with you. So once you pull that shin up, push your right foot down, not your knee. Your knee may go down a little bit, that's all right. But think about pushing your foot harder into the floor. If your shin's on the floor, push your shin harder into the floor. So it's an active point and depression. Just like in our standing pose, you'll hear teachers, and I've said myself, push down through the earth, you get the active lift. It's the same in our seated poses, but we don't push down through the hip and butt. We actually have to press down through the limb of the leg. Tristan's wrapping her arm around it. You can wrap and hold on to this leg whichever way you want. Just be aware of how much your shoulders twist, your ribs twist when you do this. How much your left hip probably comes forward and up. That's fine. It's going to be this is an asymmetrical pose. But just like in Warrior 2, or not Warrior 2, excuse me, Warrior 1, if I were to look at you from your navel up only, are your ribs still equal in it, and are your shoulders still equal in it? Are you still asking this upper body structure to stay somewhat engaged, and then you're moving this other limb and you're manipulating this muscle and joint around it, so you can be very aware of what happens. For Tristan, her left side comes down, her right side rolls forward. So Tristan's got to lift her left side, so she's got to lift her left ribs up, pull her front ribs back. So whatever side you're tilting to, try to lift from that rib cage up. Instead of sticking your ribs forward, try to pull those ribs back. If you're falling backwards, push that upper shoulder blade forward, so some action or idea of broadness across the sternum or collarbones happens. And then you hold, right? And you breathe, and you go, oh my God, why is my internet not broken up? It's because you all have very good internet. I'm so sorry. And then you've been here for a minute and you go, all right, this isn't so bad. Point your right foot, engage the lower part of your pose always. If you're kind of thinking, well, I'm getting comfortable, can't have that. Go back to the lowest part of the pose, the asana of the pose, right? The original translation does not mean posture, it means base of. Go back to the base of your posture, push the foot down at least, and get that right leg. See if that right leg pushing the foot into the floor changes the lift of your body. Pay no attention to the cute corgi in the corner. And then, yeah, we'll do it. I hope some of you saw that eye roll Tristan gave me. When you're here holding your foot, whatever position or height it is, it doesn't matter. Point your left foot, your left toe, so you're not sickling the foot, so it's not pulled back or twisted. Point your foot, holding the side of the foot, flex your left thigh and push your foot into your hand, and then pull it up. You'll find it's easier to pull the leg up. So your thigh actually activates to push the foot into its hand, not across, but down a little, and then draw it up. Changes it, huh? That's different. This is part of what stabilizes your knee and your hip. And for those of us that have knee stuff, and I do, stabilizing the joint and then moving all of this stuff is really going to let you feel and get to some of the stuff that's in there. All right, enough of that suffering. Stretch both legs out. Your arms might be tired, yeah. So from Dandasana, fingertips, check your ribs, check your shoulders, check your shoulders and elbows moving back. Check if you're squeezing your blades in, stop that. You know, think of the shoulder blades like two barn doors. You don't want them shut, a little open, but not swung out. I grew up in Missouri. We know barn doors are, so sorry if the analogy is lost on some people. Lift, elbows back. Bend your left knee on its own strength. Try to keep all this other stuff and then slide that left heel to you. This can be very challenging for a lot of people, is just to pull that heel in like that, because there's a lot of motion and movement in the pelvic muscles and lower back that takes place. Once you pull it in, point your left foot, slide the left foot under your right thigh like this Tristan's demoing. And it's about mid-thigh. Don't want it pulled way close to the hip or groin. You might think, why didn't we practice this before John? I don't know. Thought of the other one first. Oh, honestly though, this is a much more muscular challenge. John used a nice stretch and release. This is a lot more muscular. So even here, before we get going, press your left whatever down harder into the floor. Don't try to push your knee down unless it's touching the floor. But even then, you still got to press your left foot down. So flex your thigh and push your foot down. You'll feel the quad flex. You might feel the glute engage a little bit. That's okay. Great. Every cheek looks cuter with a dimple. Dimple some cheeks. Push the foot down. Bend the right knee. Slide the foot in as close as you can get. Challenge that knee to really pull and bend so it works all that inner knee connection. Reach down, grab it, pull it up. Try not to lose your left leg as you do so. All right. Now, for some of us, there is a discrepancy on how close, like, say the knee comes closer to us than the foot. My preference is you do not pull the knee in unless your foot comes that close. Because if you pull your knee in like this, and your foot's over here, that's like a lunging action. That's our Asana. That's a different pose. When we pull it across, try to let the knee stay down to in line with the foot, because that's going to put weight on the muscle and the bone on the correct muscle alignment. If your knee's up here and your foot's over there, you're gripping the inner groin. So knee doesn't need to be an armpit unless your foot's in the other armpit. Move the knee away from you, push the foot into the hand. Point it. And this will change. That makes the outer hip have to rotate differently. That's actually what frees the knee and the hip to be in Padmasana or Gomukhasana, and as my teacher say, lubricate the knee joint correctly. You're shaking great. Everything moves that's alive, right? The only thing that's not moving is a dead body. We're all living environment. And I know it probably doesn't feel like it in the middle of this class, but you are. Take a minute, you're in the pose, check your ribs, whatever side's falling back, move that upper back into it. So Tristan's left side was falling back, so her upper back on her left side especially has got to move forward. Both sets of ribs lift, the front bottom ribs pulling back so you're keeping your back muscles stacked, and they get tired. This is exhausting. I'm getting tired watching all of you do it. Trust me that I've suffered doing this a lot. All the way from the rib cage up, broaden the collarbone sternum, push the feet into the respective surfaces, floor or hand. Last few seconds, take a breath. All right, come on out, stretch your legs out. Woo. Nice variation, Lena, very good. You all right? Fingertips, lift, Dandasana. Bottom ribs back, upper back, right up there, right between the barn doors. Moves towards the sternum, broadens the collarbone. Bend your right knee, pull your right heel along the floor as close as you can get. Point the foot, slide it under your left thigh. Slide your left foot in, close as you can get. Let your left knee fall to the side. And if you look at your, before you go any farther, I'll point out on my foot, there's that outer bony part of the ankle, that big bone right there. On the inside of your right foot, there's a hollow point between the inner joint and the inner heel, right there, that space. The outer left ankle bone goes on that inner right soft spot. So Mr. Ingram would say, it's like it was designed to sit there. Can you turn and face the camera? Tristan's going to turn and face the camera so you can see the full action a little clearly. Lift. Bend one. Slide it in. Bend two. Don't pull it close. That's fine. So you want to point the foot, pick your left heel up, no, with your on its own strength, pull it closer, and then try to lay it on it. There you go. So you notice I asked Tristan to try and move it on her own without using her hand. Always prefer to try and do that as much as possible. Teach your muscles to do that rotation on their own without manipulation of the other limbs. It will create a lot of strength and health in that connective tissue. Really will over time stabilize the knee, ankle, and other small stuff. So you are kilter. So Tristan points out, see how she's off kilter here because one foot is higher than the other. Her right thigh is very low and descended. This pose, Swasthasana, is not meant to, not Swasthasana, I'm sorry, is really meant to be an active seated pose where you push through the feet, but you can't sit kilter like this. So it's really about when you pull the leg in and back to slide the foot in front of you, which thigh worked and manipulated on its own strength and which got pulled in by hand. No, listen. Pull it back. Point the foot. When you pull your when your legs come in, when you pull back, flex your thighs out wide as you push the foot down, and now do the other one. No. So now when she did it while keeping her thighs flexed, she's more centered. Not perfect, but no. It's an off-kilter pose. Your pelvis will be off balance. So as best you can, you stack your feet. The outer ankle laying on that inner heel point. If you can get your toes of your top foot to lay on your calf, awesome. What is seen as a very basic seated pose for a lot of classes or people can be very active. This is a very active pose of spreading your thighs wide. So and the minute I said that, I saw Tristan push her back into it. This is not abnormal. We often try to activate our legs by moving our spine. We've already established this. So again, front ribs back, use your fingertips on your bolster next to your hip, lift your spine up like Dandasana. Lean your ribs back, because remember, it's easy when the knees are bent to lean forward. Lean back. Try to find where your shoulders are directly above your hips. Should feel like the lower abdominals have to flex a little bit. If you were in past classes or watched the YouTube video, when you lean back and your shoulders are directly above your hips, what I call your body weight is in your backside finally. Your lowest abdominals have to flex a little to hold your spine up. This is correct. This is where doctors say if your back hurts, you probably have weak abs. Then flex your thighs, push your feet down, one onto the other, and then both into the floor, and think about your thighs spreading wider. So your thighs activate and pull out, your abdominis pulls up. Your feet push down into the floor, and if your shins touch, your shins push down into the floor. But your right shin will be the only shin touching because the left one is on the foot. Just doing this action challenges the hip flexors to have to broaden and open. The hip flexors are the inner groin muscles. There's 6 of them that run from your inner groin to your outer hip that become part of the hip extenders, which is what allows your thighs to rotate and your knees to rotate healthy. Check here, lift, pull your head up and back. For a lot of us, even though we feel like we're tall here, if you look at me, I'm at a slouch. My head moves forward. This is from years of computers. Just slouching. So as I push my feet, as Tristan does, I'm going to actively move my head back to what I'm going to feel like, to me, feels like I'm almost looking at the ceiling. But if I look to my shoulders, my head's now in line. And the camera, good. Tristan's good. A little far back in the shoulders there, Micah. Pull your bottom ribs back a little bit more, brother. There you go. A little too far back in your head shoe, but it's not your chin going up. It's moving your head back so you feel your upper back flex a little bit here. It's this action. It's not. If you ever want to know where your head is straight, you sit with your back flat to the wall with your legs like and your hips to the wall, and you push the back of your head into the wall to teach that to flex. A few seconds. We'll be here just a little bit, but actively work your legs down. Work your thighs wide, like your knees are trying to pull away from each other, because they are. This pose is a lot of prep for teaching a lot of different bandhas or locks in the pelvis because it's the most open the base of the pelvis can be. a lot of traditions of yoga, especially like Kundalini and the other types that are very into just sitting, doing lots of breathing, really work this action in the pelvis because it changes your upright structure, your lower spinal structure. Good. All right, stretch both legs straight. Try to keep your chest lifted when you do. Don't collapse everything else. Just engage your legs to do it on their own and extend. Remember, if you can move it on your own, move it on your own. Only get your other parts in to help it when you really can. Fingertips, Dandasana. Right foot first, left foot first. Bend your left knee. Whichever leg you did not have on bottom. So you're going to switch. So pull the foot in, point the foot, just get the toes underneath the thigh. Try to keep lifted, bend the right knee, the opposite leg, pull it in. Try to pick it up and slide it on the other foot as best you can. And then once you get it there and it's just you're stuck, then manipulate it there. Help it get there the rest of the way. If you ever help someone learn something, you show them, you teach them, you let them go, and then if they start to stumble, you help them again, but eventually they learn to do it on their own. Just like when we use props, you may not always need a block, bolster, chair, whatever. You got to start moving it with the intent of it being healed or being mobile or being healthy. Fingertips, ribs back so you feel that abdominal engagement. Shoulder blades do not pinch together, but elbows pull, or shoulders and elbows pull back, head moves back. Push down through the feet hard, flex those thighs and push those feet into the floor. Good, there's the adjustment. If you feel that lower abdominis engage, perfect. If you don't try to crunch and grip it. Work your legs more to feel the abdominals hold you up. It's where you see those people who have been practicing, the swamis and the masters that sit there perfectly actively upright. Their legs are always active. Mr. Angar said, none of the seated poses in all of this are super comfortable. There's always some little level of flexion or engagement that maintains the structure. Because in his words, the structure is there to house all this great stuff. Or I think he put it once, your body is your temple where all your prayers are. Make it a nice temple. I like to say, without it being too religious, you're already got all the same energy in you. You've got all the joy, you've got all the happiness. You're not making it, you're just setting yourself up to hold it. So it comes out through you. It's like polishing a mirror. Push down through the feet, polish your mirror. Few more seconds. Check your ribs. Move your head back so you feel the upper body flex. Remember, it's not chin up. It's whole neck back. When you move your neck and you don't twist your head on it, your upper back has to flex. You learn to do this, and you get to do that. Then you get in all the kundalinis, and you get all the pranayama work. A lot of students find the bandhas or locks or Jalandhara Bandha hard because we don't do this to train the upper back. To do that. That's later though. Take a breath, try to maintain the lifted body. Stretch your legs straight out on their own strength, best you can. Sometimes being on the yoga mat's hard. You got to get on carpet. That's why they practice on rugs in India mostly. Fingertips, Dandasana, active legs. So no matter what comes next, you're ready, right? Bottom ribs, heads back. You're attentive to what's going on in your body, not just to the teacher. Bend your right knee, pull your heel as close as you can to the body. Point your right foot, slide it under your right thigh, just a little bit. Just up to the heel. So a little farther than the other pose. Bend your left knee, pull it in. Lift. Pick your left heel up. Try to touch it to your right knee. If you cannot get it on your right knee because your knee is up in the air like this, put it on your right calf. Put it on your right whatever. But move it up. Start to move it up that way. And then feel Whatever it took you to get there, can you relift? Point both feet, active in both feet. The feet, just because they're laying there, are not passive. So when you point both feet actively, push your right foot into the earth again, not your knee. Don't lean into your left hip. Be aware of that. Your right hip may want to come up. Keep your right hip grounded and flex your right thigh. Push the right foot into the floor. And then point your left foot and push your left foot into whatever you're touching. So if your left foot, and it's not to push your right knee down, your right knee is going to resist it a little bit just because it's tight or it's on the earth. But you're flexing that left thigh to extend through that left leg. You're engaging that left leg to stretch from the hip to the toe in a folded form, like doing warrior two. You're stretching from the hip to the foot from a bent knee, from a folded form. That makes sense. I don't know. I don't get a lot of feedback when I'm yelling at a computer screen. All I see sometimes is smiles and then like disconnected cameras. Pratima, I like your positioning of your right leg. Move your left ankle a little bit more onto your right thigh so it's not so far across here. There you go. Yeah. Exactly. Now you feel how your left foot rolled up a little bit? That is correct. That is what you want. We're trying to create a rotation so the soles of the feet point up over time. That movement is more important than your knees going down to the floor. The more your feet learn to rotate sole up, the more health of your knee you have, the less likely to damage your knee, and the quicker your hips will gain rotation. Feet that don't rotate is a clear sign to me that there's some other damage going on or some other blocks going on that need to be adjusted. So now you got comfy. If you want more, pull your left foot a little bit closer up your right thigh, about midway if you want. Point your foot, point both feet, push your right foot into the floor, push your left foot into whatever part of your thigh is touching. Ribs up, shoulder back, upper back forward. And then if this is feeling good, take a couple breaths, pull that left foot a little higher. Then grab your yoga strap. If you cannot, grab your foot behind your back. Just like you did with the straight leg, we do it here. Full Padmasana is both arms are behind your back, grabbing their feet. Madness. Let's stretch your left arm out, turn the palm back, stretch it back and down, swing it across. Reach for that left foot or left strap or whatever you can get a hold of. If you can't grab anything, you stretch your fingers around and rub them across your abdominal wall. You start encouraging it that way, even though it's not there. You don't go from painting a painting from just like looking at the canvas and expecting it to be there. Go through the process. All right, same action. When your left shoulder's in this pose, how does your rib cage twist? Back, right? Some of you, when you twist back, may go down, some may go up. Whatever rib cage side is shorter, you got to lift that one first. So for Tristan, her left ribs are lower than her right, so she's got to lift her left ribs up. My back is tighter on my right side, so my right ribs come down. So you just kind of either feel or touch or look, infer, and get that lift. So over time, the relationship of the shoulder to your back to your hip is they're working together instead of one compensating too much for the others. Push your feet into the ground, engage. Not to push the knees down, but actively push your feet down. Drop your left. Your left. I know. You gotta stay lifted. Move your left ribs forward, pull your right ribs back. Just be in it for a minute. Push the feet into the floor. I know it's 7, don't worry. If you gotta go and you wanna skip the other side and be walking in a circle for the next day or two, go ahead. I wouldn't suggest it. And just for a moment, begin to practice what it's going to be in the future. So your right hand reaches and grabs your left forearm and climb your right hand towards your left bicep. And try to work your ribs. Don't worry, it's not about telling. Your left side gets an asymmetrical pose. Release your arms, fingertips, lift, get to Dandasana of the upper body, stretch one leg out than the other. Lift, start by bending the left knee, pull it under the right thigh. Bend your right knee, pick it up, first on its own strength, and do the best you can. Try it once and then get it there the rest of the way, if you didn't get it there on the first go. You gotta, I think in the yoga practice, I don't know when this thought came, but I recognize the point in my time when you have to give yourself the time just to try and fail into practice. Not to do it perfectly. That's why I practice a lot of yoga alone. Push your left foot in the floor, keep both toes pointed, both feet pointed, active in the foot. Push the right foot down, left foot down into the earth. If you can't quite get your left foot to push down, you feel like your thighs unengaged, that probably means your foot's too close to your hip. So it's okay to move it out a little bit so you can feel that flexion, which is the pelvis engaging. And just sit here for a moment. We'll warm this side up. Practice engaging the legs, not by pushing the knee down, pushing the foot down. Jesus. All right, pull your right foot a little closer. If you want to try and hop it closer on your own strength, great, go for it. Point, push down. Fingertips. Use them as guides because you'll know if you take your hands out of it and you start manipulating your hips, your ribs will kind of twist and sheet. Harder to let old habits play the game here. Push your feet down. I'll say it a billion times to save your knee joints. The more that your foot rolls up, the more you're in the right motion and right space. Very good, Pratima. Very nice. Nice, Shubha. Good, Micah. Man, all of you are just right. If I can't, I'm not complimenting you. I can't see your foot, but assume that I think you're doing great. Even if you're just laying down backward bending a little bit. Push the feet down, lift. Pull the foot up closer. Finish it as close as you can, even if it's only mid-thigh. Use your strap. Reach behind, get a hold of the foot. If you have to go and you need a doctor's note that, or yoga teacher's note that you're late for another thing, I'll send you an email, print it out. Left hand reaches back and across, or right hand, excuse me, right arm goes back and across. So it's more challenging for me because computer arm, it's the mouse arm on the right side. Push the feet into the floor. Whatever rib cage is lower, lift it. If your right side's twisting back, move your right ribs forward, your left ribs back. And you chill here. Spend 30 seconds in this. Reactivate your legs by pushing your feet into the earth. And then take your left arm back and crawl for the right bicep. Start to teach the body what's going to be later. Good. Even though this may be easy for your legs, work your arms, work your mid-back. Make sure all your parts are working together so you can feel what's going on in the pose, not just how your back's tight and your hips are fine. There is some connection, I promise. You're all connected. At least you're on your own body parts. All right, let it go. Arms out, lift, stretch your legs out, lay down, get a savasana for a few moments. If you would like bolster blankets, whatever you would like under your back head. So whatever you need to support yourself for the next few minutes, let the eyes close. I've talked enough. Feel what you've gotten from your work. And rest until I ring the bell and enjoy the fruits of your yogic practice. Slowly increase the depths of your breathing. Begin to awaken your body, opening, closing the hands, pointing, flexing the feet. Bend your knees, roll to your side, slowly up you come. Until we meet again, namaste. All right, if you got any questions for